Thank you for listening to the If You Market podcast. I'm your host, Sky Cassidy, and today we'll be talking about the sales and marketing connection with Erica Lanyon. She's the VP of Marketing at SourceDay. Erica has been both a marketing consultant and a corporate marketing leader for most of her career, enabling her to identify the right prospects in the right markets and engage with them along the customer buying journey. She's a knack for building marketing departments from the ground up and transforming them into accountable, revenue-gathering centers of excellence. Erica, excited to have you on the podcast today.
Great. Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So the first thing I want to jump into with you is how you got into the B2B marketing field specifically.
Yes, definitely. So I am fortunate to live in Central Texas, in Austin, a great city, and it is a technology hub. So early on in my career, there were a lot of startups that were happening, and I was fortunate to get hired at one of them. Back then, marketing was definitely more of a cost center, and this is pre-marketing automation, pre-email automation, and a lot of the revenue was generated by events and in-person trade shows. So I was actually hired for an event marketing position. As my career developed, email automation and marketing automation started coming on the scene, and I saw it as a really good way of being accountable for the initiatives that we were doing, and I started investigating it. I was fortunate that our company was adopted a marketing automation tool early on, and so my skill set and my forte started to develop in that direction. So yes, I have been both on the corporate side, and then a little after that, working at that company, I went to the agency side. So I was able to see both sides of the fence and advise other organizations on how to adopt best practices and help their marketing team become more focused on revenue and accountability.
All right, I have to point out to our listeners, you're in Texas. It seems like an obscene amount of the guests on this show so far have been from Texas. It's not intentional. We schedule people we think will be good guests, and there just happens to be a lot of you guys in Texas these days.
Yeah. I think it's, there's a lot of things going on here, and but there are marketers all over the U.S. and I've worked with a lot of them. But we're a tight knit group over here, and so many of us know each other.
Nice. I guess Texas is just a great hub of B2B marketing.
Yeah.
All right. So that's kind of your background. What about just so for the listeners so they know what you do there at SourceDay and what SourceDay does? Can you give a little bit of a maybe an elevator pitch almost on what SourceDay does and then what your day-to-day is like there?
Yeah, definitely. So SourceDay is a software company, and we create automation for the purchase order process of manufacturing and distribution companies. Many distribution companies and manufacturing have to buy all the parts and pieces needed to make the widgets that they sell. And we automate that procurement process and help manufacturing and distribution companies become more focused on efficiencies and process and revenue.
Excellent. So your day-to-day there, I mean, we're talking today about the marketing and sales connection, that critical connection between those two departments. It used to be so adversarial. Before we get to that, can you speak a little bit to your day-to-day? And I'm sure you're in marketing. I'm sure you're involved with the connection with sales, but that's probably not the only thing you do.
Yep.
What kind of stuff do you cover over there now?
So I cover everything that is marketing, and I have been fortunate when I am on the corporate side to work with companies that are small to medium size where you wear many hats. And so I'm used to doing not only the revenue performance management, the lead gen, the sales and marketing alignment, but everything else that comes along with marketing. So that's product marketing, that is PR, that's analyst relations, that's content creation. So anything having to do with marketing, I'm involved in.
So you're what they would call in a software people would call a full stack. You're a full stack marketer.
Exactly. And I think that it's really important because so much of marketing is very broad, and there's so many different facets of it. I feel fortunate because everything that I come at in marketing is focused on pipeline and revenue. And I think that that has kind of made a difference in my approach to marketing and then the impact that me and my team are making within the company. Not that none of those other things aren't important. I just think that if you keep that in mind, it makes interacting with the executives, interacting with the board, interacting with sales, and all the different departments a little bit easier.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. You have to have a big picture kind of before you can have a small picture, I guess.
Exactly.
So the sales and marketing connection, can you give just kind of a, I guess, a big picture of what you're talking about when you're talking about the sales and marketing connection, and then we'll drill in from there?
Yeah. So, I have worked in many different types of organizations, and I know that there are some where the sales and marketing alignment isn't great. And I currently work in one where I feel that there is a very tight and strong bond between marketing and sales. I think Serious Decision has said that, if a company has a tight marketing and sales alignment, there is a 24% faster growth and 27% faster profit growth year over year. So I think it's a really important thing, but it's easier said than done. And what happens, I think, is that when you have to think about marketing and sales alignment, you have to kind of take a little bit of a step back because it's not something that either naturally happens or happens overnight. Sometimes if you're lucky, maybe that could happen. But I think it's more of understanding what your particular organization is like, how it's structured, and think about, how does marketing fit into that, and work from there. If you are in a place where maybe the marketing and sales alignment isn't natural or it isn't instantaneous, then you have to think about ways on getting that to work. And I do feel that you can get it to work. You just have to be a little bit more strategic about it, and think about it a little bit more.
Like there's this natural thing in the past that people, I think, they read the Dilbert comics and they just think sales and marketing are supposed to be fighting with each other. And then in consumer marketing, where most people come from, it's just you don't have the connection. They don't have to really work together. You've got billboards and TV ads, and there's historically no tracking of anything. So how are they going to work together? They just become scapegoats for each other, and then that's what everybody knows. But then we get into the B2B
Sure.
space, and we've got MarTech now. We can track everything. We've got marketers actually being commissioned on sales now because you can track stuff back so much. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, it seems like you kind of have to break that in some people if you identify that it's not just a lack of connection properly between sales and marketing, but you probably run into some people that are actively, pitting the departments against each other.
Yeah, I think that there might be some of that. And in my experience, I think that that's more of kind of how the organization is structured. I do feel that a good, strong marketing and sales alignment comes from the top down. How the executives not only feel about sales, but how they feel about marketing. And I think that that's one way that a marketer can kind of determine what the climate is just, how is marketing positioned within the company, and how do the executives feel? And are they promoting this alignment? If they're not promoting the alignment, then it's going to be a lot more difficult, I think, to achieve it. Not impossible, but I think that it's going to take a lot of work. The organizations that I have seen where it is successful, and then it's typically a successful company, is where it's coming from the executives and the top down, saying this is something that we want to make sure is happening, that these two departments are in sync. And there's definitely some ways to do that. But if you realize that you're in an organization where that's not going to happen, then it's again, you might have to evaluate if that's
That's
something
somewhere you want
that's
to be,
really
I guess,
important
too.
to you. Right, exactly. Well, because I think that there's also going to be some uphill climbing for marketing if that's kind of
Right.
what the climate is. If there's
It could
other
end up
things that are going to be
sabotaging your
involved in
career
that.
when you get in the wrong company. We've talked about it before in this podcast. And for people who really, really aren't just struggling within their job but planning on going somewhere, you really got to look at your company and make sure it's the right fit for you. Not just that, that they'll accept you, but
Exactly.
that they're going to allow you to grow and become a successful marketer.
Exactly. I completely agree. And, um, you have to kind of evaluate that because yeah, I think that one of the things that'll probably pop up is this old school sales guy or old school sales team. But marketing is very much on the forefront, and marketing is evolving pretty quickly. And I see in my experience, I've seen organizations where they are promoting the evolution of the sales team just as much as they're promoting the evolution of the marketing team. And I think that that's kind of how the groups kind of get closer and closer together. Where I kind of in my current state see us pretty much in the same place. I mean, we sit together, we have meetings together, we interact together. I mean, there's a huge meshing of the two teams where there's a little bit of a blur of where one starts and
That's
where the
great.
other one begins, or one ends and the other one begins. Yeah. So, but I think it's a lot harder if you have more of a traditional sales team that doesn't, typically doesn't value the efforts of marketing and understand the new role that marketing plays.
They see it as a scapegoat.
Yeah, exactly. And that's always a very tricky place to get when you start playing the blame game. And that's kind of where things can get go south pretty quickly.
So when you talk about the blurred line, we've got the SDR department here, and I know a lot of people have the sales development rep teams now.
Mhm.
And would you classify those, just a off the cuff question, kind of? Would you put those into sales or into marketing?
I get asked this all the time, and most of my positions in the B2B space, we call they can be SDRs, they can be BDRs or MDRs, um, whatever you call them. Uh, Typically, that's the question. Do they report to sales or do they report to marketing? In most of my experience, they've reported to marketing, and currently they are reporting under my umbrella right now. I always say, I don't care where they reside. It doesn't matter to me whether they report up to sales, whether they report up to marketing, as long as there's a strong alignment and that they understand exactly what campaign initiatives are being done, that they're involved in those campaign initiatives. They understand, the lead process and the lead handoff, and they follow up on those things. As long as everything is in sync, then it doesn't matter to me, where they reside. But yeah, I get asked that all the time, and it's still even a conversation internally right now in my
Right.
company of where they should be. And I always have the same, like it doesn't matter to me as long as everybody's understanding where they fit and how they can contribute.
Yeah, yeah. I think it matters to the what I see the tug of war always happening, because sales wants to say, hey, if there was our responsibility, then we want to be compensated for them. People want to receive compensation on those people, and if marketing is going to be the ones running and training them and whatnot, then marketing wants it's kind of that goes back to the age old fight of, if these guys are going to be assigned to us, we want to get credit for their activities. I guess you'd
Right.
say. And then I guess I mean, I called them sales development reps, so I kind of put them in a box right there of where they're going to be.
Hmm.
If you call them sales development reps and then you say that the marketing department's is responsible for them, then I guess that could cause confusion.
Yeah, exactly. And here we call them business development reps. So it kind of makes that, they're not development reps, they're not sales development reps, they're business development reps. So it kind of is a little ambiguous between them. But yeah, I think that the way that I like to approach it, and usually how I have it structured, if they are under my umbrella, is just to make sure that the lead process and the sales process, that you're completely aligned between marketing and sales, and that's actually important. Regardless if you're having the conversation about the SDRs, because I think that that's where you get that understanding of, like, we're all accountable for the sales cycle. And I always come to it, and I always come to sales saying, look, I feel just as accountable to the revenue and the bottom line as you are. Now, I may have a little bit more responsibilities at the front end, and I certainly respect your process on the latter end, but
Right.
we are in this together. And I think that there's always this, when you're starting to come together and seeing things in the same light, it just bridges all gaps because they understand that you are understanding. You're not coming at it as a us versus them kind of thing. You're not coming at it we're responsible for this, well, you're responsible for that. If you're all responsible for everything together, then those conversations are just so much easier to have, and then those relationships just start to develop.
Yeah, I'm more on the marketing side myself now. I've worked on both sides, but I always say within our company, I tell people, hey, the marketing department works for sales. That's what they're here for.
Yeah.
So sales, these guys are an asset for you. You should be, like you said, seeing the value in them and glad that they're there working for you, because it doesn't mean you own them. It means that they're there to assist you. Like they're there to help you, and you should appreciate that help kind of, and help them. A line I always like to use. I think somebody might have used it before, but help me help you. Um,
Hmm.
I scream at people all the time when they're not cooperating with the help that you're trying to give them. Um, but yeah, for sales to understand that marketing is there to help them, marketing is there to assist them, and if they can work hand in hand, they can really get a lot more out of marketing, I guess. So the connection between sales and marketing, one other area that there's a lot of talk of in recent years is having, the VP of sales and marketing, having one person oversee both departments ultimately. Where do you stand on that debate?
I think that again, there's just so much to do. I think that there's so much to do in marketing and there's so much to do in sales that I don't think that I am an advocate of that, just because there's not any possible way that one individual could be able to, span both of those roles, I think, adequately,
Right.
personally. Um, Now, again, I think that if you are hiring in an organization these executives for these two different departments, um, I'm making sure that the marketing VP understands fully the sales process, and then hiring a sales VP that understands the marketing process. I think that understanding each other's worlds is really important. But I don't ever feel like I'm covering all of the tasks and responsibilities adequately of just being one person and all the things that need to be done in marketing. I couldn't imagine having to cover the sales side too.
I guess it's for much larger companies. I mean, ultimately, there's
Right.
always somebody who's responsible for both sales and marketing. And you go up
Yep.
to the top, you have the CEO, the president, the owner, they're responsible for everything. I think just in a larger company, having that person responsible for that kind of puts one more person between sales, marketing, and that that top level CEO person.
Yeah, and I've heard like a chief revenue officer, and there's a lot of companies that are going to that. Again, if that person completely understands both roles really well and then can hire accordingly to support all of the different initiatives and things that happen, I think that that would be right. But I still think that there needs to be a little bit of a separation between the two, because I think that just makes a well-rounded organization.
Right. Excellent. And then when you have a separation, you get back to our main point, the connection of that separation,
Hmm.
that sales and marketing connection. Do you have any kind of specific outline for key areas that in how they need to be connected? Anything like that you can share?
Yeah, so I mean, I typically, again, whenever I enter into a new organization or if I am a consultant advising an organization, I always sit down and first of all ask, what is the relationship between sales and marketing? And if you find out that there really isn't a lot of interaction, if there really aren't any joint meetings, if uh, there's not really an understanding of each other's processes, that's probably one of the first things that you need to do is just establish that relationship. Start having the meetings and saying, let's sit down and talk about what the sales process is, what our particular customer journey is. And typically what you'll find is that you'll go around the room and everyone has an idea of what that is, but it's slightly different, depending on person to person, and it's never really been documented. So if there's not that baseline of understanding with the documentation that everybody blesses, then I think it's really kind of difficult to have any more further interaction or conversations. So you basically have to have that, and then have that clear lead handoff process.
Right.
If that is also something that hasn't really been established, then it's really difficult to repeat any of those processes.
Yeah, I've seen, regardless of the size of the company, the lead handoff is the thing that people seem to kind of take for granted. Like, oh yeah, lead is generated
Hmm.
and people are going to follow up with it, and the the necessary information isn't passed off there because it's so taken for granted that here's a lead, salespeople go get it, and then salespeople go after it, and there can be so much disconnect. It can be horrifying to
Exactly.
look at that lead handoff and look what happened in something that you thought was so simple and can be simple. It's just you need
Hmm.
a little bit of information has to be passed between the two parties.
Exactly. And I think that it has to also be something that if it's not understood, then it's really easy to start like, well, I thought they had it. Well, no, I thought they had it, or they're not giving me good enough, or they're, all of those arguments that can just start getting kicked up can start to happen. But if everybody knows and if it's blessed and that's um, communicated throughout the organizations, then everyone's
Yeah,
good.
I've seen things as simple as a lead's passed off and it's from, let's say, a webinar. And they pass off, here's all the leads from this webinar. And they just give them to the salespeople to pursue. The salespeople are pursuing them. They don't know it's from a webinar. It's just a lead. It's like that simple. They
Right.
don't even know or they don't know which people attended versus didn't attend. So when they're calling, the first couple of minutes of the call on every one of the leads ends up being trying to explain to the person or arguing with the person about whether they attended a webinar or not, or like the salespeople just aren't coached on here's the situation coming in, here's the approach coming in.
Hmm.
So I've heard so many arguments where I'm like, why is a salesperson arguing with this person over whether they, attended XYZ or downloaded this white paper or whatever it is? And that's a problem at the sales level, but the handoff can really affect that too. It's kind of a drastic example, I think, but that's for anybody out there listening, that's a huge example of the
Hmm.
type of handoff issue that you don't foresee. And it seems so simple, but sales guys get the leads. They just
It
go
happens
after
all the
them.
time.
Yeah.
Right. It does happen all the time. And so not only should there be an understanding of like when the handoff happens, like to your point, there needs to be some information on, where did they come from and how warm are they and how engaged are they? I always harp on in everything I do about the people, process, and technology. So there's the people, and they obviously have to be able to have the skill set to come to the table. But the processes are really important, and so not only do you have to like this is the lead off process, but these are all of the things that we're doing on this side of I call it this side of the opportunity. I mean, because to me, the clear delineation is that opportunity created.
Right.
Again, everyone has that accountability from lead attainment all the way down to the closed one. Um, but to me, that kind of line in the sand a little bit is the opportunity creation. So what's happening pre-opportunity, and then everyone has to be on the same page of what's happening post-opportunity. And this needs to be you sat down and talked about. And then once that is, okay, so what's going on both sides? I always say that there's a lot of value that marketing can bring post opportunity, but I'm very respectful of the process post opportunity. That's to me where the handoff happens, and then sales takes it, and then they work their
Yeah, they
magic.
get very territorial when marketing wants to contact them at that point.
They do, and I'm extremely respectful for that. And we put in processes that the technology supports to make sure and ensure that marketing doesn't step on any of those toes. And unless the sales department says, "Hey, we need some help on these certain things on this side um, of the opportunity," and then we jump in. But making sure that we're not, sending them a marketing campaign that maybe the sales team at that point does not want communicated to those prospects.
Right.
So again, it's kind of a yin and yang kind of thing. And the other thing that I do and I try to set up all the time is a process where so marketing gets the lead, they obtain the name, they nurture the lead. Maybe the BDRs will further qualify them. But I always try to make it a point that the sales team is the person or the group that decides whether it's an opportunity or not.
Right.
And the reason that I do that is to make sure and ensure that sales can't at any point come back and say, hey, you're giving us bad opportunities. You're not giving us good leads. Well, if they're the ones that are determining whether they're good or not and that they're officially going to accept them and start working on them and putting their time into them, that they're the ones that determine that.
Yeah.
And I find that makes it, really seamless. And you just avoid a lot of possible issues that can come down the road.
Yep. Now you're using a lot of words that I recognize as kind of CRM trigger words, and we haven't talked about CRM at all yet.
Mm-hmm.
But you're talking about the opportunities in there, the closed one, all that kind of stuff. Where does the CRM come into play in this integration?
So I think that there's a lot of marketers out there that live and breathe, and I certainly do in a marketing automation system. And there's a lot of great ones out there. Because I am so focused on revenue, accountability to the sales process, a lot of what I do and where I live is in the CRM. That's where the salespeople live. That's where all their information is. And so I need to make sure that not only do I understand what our particular CRM is and the instance and how it's set up, but I have a voice and a say of how that's set up, because I need for it to do certain marketing processes and support certain marketing processes. And then I have to understand what's going on once the a lead becomes an opportunity and what happens on that side. And then I need to be able to report on those things. So I think that it's again, the people, processes, and technology is, it comes together, and it's extremely important to a marketer. And if there are marketers out there that really don't understand, we use Salesforce. There's a lot out there, but we use Salesforce. They don't understand the technology. They need to get in there. They have to be able to stay relevant and understand what's happening with all of the initiatives and things that they're doing, all the budget that they're using. They have to know what's happening in that technology.
Yeah, I guess I'd say nowadays one button in a CRM somewhere can drastically change the outcome of a campaign.
It can, yeah.
If you don't know that button, or if you don't know that search field or segment, then you can just get large percentages less outcome than you could have if you knew how to do that little tweak that you can do with this technology now.
Exactly.
Excellent. Well, I want to cut out to break, but after break, I'd like to talk about kind of the sales messaging versus marketing messaging. You'd mentioned that earlier. I'd love to dig into that a little bit more, and then anything else you have with the sales marketing connection, maybe the tech stack. Mention a couple of tech stacks that you like or have seen out there being successful, that kind of stuff. So we're going to jump to break, and we'll be back in just a minute.
Our episode today is brought to you by Engagio. If you're thinking about ABM and not sure how to start or which plays to run, Engagio just came out with a new playbook for marketers, featuring 16 plays that have been tested in the field to get results. Check them out at engagio.com/orchestration.
Hello and welcome back to the If You Market podcast. I'm your host, Sky Cassidy. I'm here again with the Erica Lanyon, the VP of Marketing at SourceDay. Erica, did I butcher your name there?
No, you got it perfect.
Excellent. So we were talking about the marketing and sales connection, or sales and marketing connection, however people want to say it, the critical connection between those two departments. We covered a lot of stuff in the first half here. A couple things I want to make sure we get to in the second half. Reporting, the messaging between the departments. You brought up the people, processes, technology a lot. We'll get to the tech stack in there. And then also, I guess to start off, sales and marketing connection is important, but it seems more and more that there are companies out there that don't really have a sales department, these software as a service companies, where when you dial 1 for sales, all you get is a voicemail. And it's basically marketing drives people to the site. They make a purchase on the site for multiple options, and that's it. What do you think about that? I mean, it's just kind of a random thing to throw out there, but is there a sales and marketing connection there? Do they still have a sales department of some type?
That's a good question. I tend to think that they do. I've never worked in a company where it's such a high transactional type of a sale. Usually my sales cycles are a little bit longer, so there is definitely a need for sales and the sales expertise. I have to think that there is someone driving that. It just seems like there would be a lot of the process missing.
Yeah.
I mean, unless it's just such a high transactional thing where you can just put your credit card in, and then there's really not very much customer support after.
It's almost like it's more of a consumer. It's B2B, but they're acting like a consumer business at that point.
Exactly. And it's just not really a environment that I've ever been in.
Yeah, it's the number one complaint in our meetings and our sales and marketing meetings that our sales guys have is, hey, we're getting these companies and they look like a good target, but there's nobody to talk to there. Like
Hmm.
nobody answers the phone. They just have a website. It's software as a service, and they can just buy off the website, and that's it.
Right. I find that sometimes a little frustrating myself when I'm
Yeah,
on that other side, when I'm on the consumer side.
it's a different type of business model, maybe. Anyway, just want to throw that out to start with. Sorry, just something that popped into mind for me. Let's get back to the topic at hand, the sales and marketing connection for those companies that have both departments. How about we talk a little more about the messaging? I think you'd mentioned you want to talk about that, the messaging and having both departments on the same messaging.
Exactly. I think that, one thing that I see that happens with organizations, and a lot of times this is an element that, depending on the growth of the organization and how mature it is, that they may not have a sales enablement group or sales enablement person. And I think what happens a lot of times are the messaging for the company and the product and the offering gets a little confused with what sales enablement. And I think
Right.
that again has to be a conversation that either the marketing and sales leads or heads or executives have, or the two groups have, to make it sure when sales, if they're requesting something, are they requesting a piece of content that they can use to sell, or do they need some just type of sales enablement, like information that they can then use to continue their sales process. But I think that it's really important. The more that you can combine efforts and include each other on those efforts, both not only marketing when they're developing marketing initiatives and messaging and content, but sales when they're developing their process and what works and what they communicate to their prospects. The more that that's combined, I think the better. When marketing is trying to put messaging together for their organization, they need to talk to all the different departments. They need to talk to customers. They need to talk to prospects if possible. They need to talk to partners in the channel.
Right,
Because I
right.
think that if you start doing that just on your own, kind of what marketing thinks that the messaging should be, I find that oftentimes that you're either missing a huge piece, or you're just slightly off, and it just starts to sound like,
Marketing's got a great idea, but there's a
right,
reason that that's going to fail at the sales level. Great at the
exactly.
marketing level, but bad at the sales level for some reason.
Right, and they're the ones that have they talk to the prospect a lot more than marketing does. A lot of times we're doing it on the digital side, and we're engaging a lot earlier in the sales process. But they're physically talking and hearing what the pain points are, and trying to solve those, or present the product or the service to be able to solve those. So it's really important that they're on there.
I've heard people say that the sales team is the number one brand of of a company, because most people's interaction in a B2B company is with the sales team. But it seems like you're kind of saying that it's also the number one kind of market research, you might almost say, because they have so much interaction with clients, with potential clients and whatnot, that their feedback for the marketing department is extremely critical, since they have so much interaction with these people.
Exactly, and depending on the organization, it could also be set up where post close one, after the prospect becomes a customer, that they're the account manager as well, or that they're involved in some type of cross sell or upsell. So they, I feel, have a closer relationship to prospects and customers typically than marketers do.
Right.
There's a lot. I do talk to a lot of our customers. I use a lot of customers for references and for analyst relations and those type of things, but I still don't think that I've developed the relationship that a salesperson has and has more frequent conversations. So it's really important that they're on their end, then they're going to be, taking that message and running with it. So if it doesn't work for them, it's going to be kind of hard to make that message successful.
Right. And I guess it goes right back then to that whole handoff of the lead, making sure that the messaging from marketing is flowing through to sales. So if you don't have the lead handoff and you don't have the messaging right, like you're not even going to find out the messaging's right. I guess if enough information is being pushed in that lead handoff, then the sales might come back and say, hey, I can't come in with this angle. I can't, this isn't going to help me out. So these things really all do work together. And I guess it goes all back to that joint meetings communication thing.
Correct. Right. I mean, they may not even know what messaging you've created because, a lot of times, and I say this all the time, where if we don't provide something for sales, they're just going to go and do it themselves. And that's it, that's not really what marketing wants sales to do. We're kind of the owner of the brand and the owner of the style guide and owner of the messaging. And so you want to make sure that that's all getting, sent out properly outside of your organization.
I mean, salespeople's job is to sell, and the good ones, if they're not given something that works, they'll make something up and it Completely. Might not be what you want.
They've got quota to obtain. Yeah, exactly. They're going to get it regardless. And so might as well be a partnership with them to be able to get that and help them get that.
So where are you at with the sales and marketing departments working in the same space, kind of, whether it's the same building, the same actual office space, within the same walls, that kind of thing?
I think it's imperative. And, this is something that I've kind of just learned just by experience, because I know in the situations that we are sitting like right next to each other, not only are you communicating of your process and everything, the messaging, but you're developing personal relationships and you get closer in that way. And I think that in any work situation, the closer that you are with your coworkers, the better. And so we're literally right next to each other. Our desks are, sitting all in one place. So you get to hear the conversations. You get to hear what the questions are. I think that that's probably the biggest thing, is that if sales has a question about something or they have a need, it's not like they're just talking amongst themselves. You can hear it and you can address it right then. I don't know how many times, and this happens with a lot of companies, where you actually have the information that they need. It just wasn't ever clearly sent out or communicated.
They don't know it.
All got so many things to do, right? They don't know that it exists. And so you're able to provide that before they go and recreate the wheel or go and do it themselves.
Yeah, I had a new person ask me on the floor the other day about specific information on a certain product. We've got a PDF with all the information you can send. Like, you should have this memorized and know exactly where it is and be sending it. And it was, one of those, if somebody's got to be there to hear this. I don't know the sales, how it got to that point in it, but yeah, I guess having marketing sitting where they can hear the stuff, at least some of marketing. Maybe some companies are too large to have them, on the same floor. But if nothing else, maybe you've got to have a spy in the room there, listening in on this stuff and having lunch with the salespeople and whatnot, or a sales to marketing liaison.
Exactly. Well, and I think that so many things change. So I get stressed at the beginning of this podcast about making sure that the processes are aligned and you sit there and you understand what the sales cycle is. And but things happen within your market space all the time. If you might have all your personas mapped out, but the salespeople are probably one of the first groups to be able to say, you know what, there's another persona on the scene. And, we typically sold to this department or this group of people within an organization, but now maybe IT is starting to pop up, or something with, the finance department they're starting to get involved in the sales process. You need to know about those things so then you can prepare for them, and then together develop the persona, develop that specific messaging, possibly the marketing campaigns that you need to attack that new group of people. And that just doesn't happen if you both are in your own separate little bubbles. So I think that sometimes there might be a little bit of a resistance to marketers getting close to sales, especially if there's a little bit of animosity there. But the closer that you can get, the better, because that's the more information that you're getting to be able to help them and help your own efforts.
It's interesting you mentioned that. As you're talking, I'm thinking, thoughts are just spinning through my head, and I'm realizing that here in our company, every Friday we have a ping pong tournament or a dart tournament or just some type of fun interaction thing for everybody in the office. And I'd never really, it never stuck out to me, but people will all just be milling around talking to each other while this is going on. And having kind of informal events where people can come together, not just a sales and
Mhm.
marketing meeting where they'll naturally talk about work. They'll talk about other stuff too, but these kind of things can come up. It's an opportunity for people to casually ask each other questions about what's going on in different areas. I'd never thought of kind of the value of that type of an event in that way, but a company picnic, people are probably going to talk a decent amount about business, and they might find things out they wouldn't have otherwise.
Exactly. There's really great culture here, and I'm very fortunate to be at a company with really great culture that everyone gets along, and we do those things, and they're not really forced fun. It's not something that is put upon us by the company.
I like that word though. I might call it forced fun Fridays.
Yeah, it's not. It's we all just kind of all do it together. We'll go and have a cookout outside or eat lunch outside, and we do have a ping pong table. I think it's one of those things that every company's starting to have. But it really helps. It helps with that interaction because that's the only way as an organization. Because the first thing for each individual is we need to make this company successful. Then we need to make the team successful. Then I need to make myself successful. And we all kind of think that and have that same philosophy here. And I find that those are the best companies to work for, is the ones that where you're just, this is a big, huge team effort and we're all working towards that same goal. If there's a big rift between big, huge, important groups of the company, then that's probably not going to happen. And those are two really important groups that need to be working together.
Yeah, when we first started doing that, one of the things I noticed is I wanted to pit departments against each other. I was just like, oh, we'll have sales versus marketing or something. And people weren't really interested in doing that. And I realized really quick, oh, that's a good thing. They don't want to have a manufactured rift between each other. I guess if two departments were really at odds with each other, they would be, they would really be champing at the bit to compete against each other in that kind of way. So I guess it's a good sign when they all get along on those kind of things too. When you talk about the sales and marketing connection, I guess it's just not just CRMs and lead handoff, but also actual personal interaction connection.
Right. And I think that you celebrate each other's victories. I've worked in organizations where there is a rift between marketing and sales. And what I started to see happening is, I guess you started defending your accomplishments. So with reporting, you could get into the CRM and see, okay, so X amount of pipeline was created directly from marketing efforts, and X amount of revenue was created by marketing efforts. And then sales has their reporting mechanisms, and those numbers were not reconciling.
Yeah.
But when you have a good marketing and sales alignment, then I see that sales says, hey, this was a closed won deal that came directly from this particular marketing initiative. And I want to make sure that everybody knows that that's what happened. And marketing can also say, this closed in a shorter amount of time because sales jumped on it and they did everything that they needed to do and worked their magic. And now we've got revenue for the company. And you start to celebrate each other, and it becomes, again, more of a joint effort than us versus them type of mentality.
And I guess the opposite of office politics, where people start messing with the numbers just to be able to, you can't even trust the numbers that you're trying to make business decisions off anymore, because both sides have found, here's the numbers that are measured and here's how we can skew them in our favor, kind of.
Exactly. Well, and I think that that's where the tools come into play. And again, I think that this needs to be something that is brought from the top down. This is the tool of record, and this is what we're going to use, and everyone needs to adopt it and utilize it. I find that, and I worked in an organization where they would say that, but they were just really soft on on that mandate. And then what would happen is that I would have my numbers and they would come from the CRM. I say, this comes directly from Salesforce, where the salespeople were in Excel spreadsheets. And I have a saying that my Salesforce report trumps your spreadsheets. But this organization was not, it was very, very sales oriented. And so they would still take the spreadsheets over what was in the tool.
They had given all the power to the sales team, kind of whatever they say
Exactly.
flies. Yeah. I've
And it
heard
was
that a
terrible.
similar statement about CRMs, and we have one in our company so many times on this podcast. As few podcasts as we've had to this point, we've heard it so many times. I'm sure we're going to hear it on every other podcast still. And the mantra was just kind of that if it's not in the CRM, it didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we preach at our company. I've heard other companies use the exact same mantra. And I thought it was just something that we came up with. But no, apparently a lot of companies realize that that's has to be pushed on to people. I know when all the MarTech and CRMs and all that stuff started becoming really big, the big issue with them was, yeah, you go ahead and implement a CRM, but good luck getting your salespeople to buy in. Good luck getting them to actually use it. You're just going to have to use it for other stuff. And that was always the issue. How do you get them to actually use the system? Because, they'll hold people hostage in that, hey, you want sales from us? Then let us do our thing, kind of.
Right.
You want me to fill out this form or make a sale? That's the type of attitude I remember hearing back in the day when trying to give a CRM to salespeople.
Right. And I think, again, it's just one of those things of making sure that people adopt it and use it. So then you can track, you can forecast, and you can tell what's coming down and what's working. That I think is really important for reporting and metrics as well, because in what I do, I don't only report on marketing initiatives and the accomplishments of marketing. I also report on sales and on partner, on the channel. Because for me, and being a marketing executive, I want to make sure if partners are doing something that's really, really important, and partner marketing is under my umbrella, that then we can focus a little bit more resources and efforts towards that. So my goal is what's working, and let's focus on that. If something isn't working, I'm not so just hard on it has to come from marketing, or it doesn't come from anywhere. I want to make sure that if sales are sourcing a lot of the good leads, the ones that are turning into opportunities and are closing and are high deal sizes, then let's help them and figure out what we can do to further that cause a little bit. So I think that that's also something I've seen in my past, is that everyone has a quota of MQLs and SQLs and opportunities. And everyone's like, no, my numbers are the right ones. Or
right.
Partners the channel did better than marketing did. Well, great. I celebrate that. Let me see what I could do to help.
Part of this connection, then you've talked about it a little bit a couple of times as I stumble over my tongue here, but reporting and the reporting with this sales marketing connection. Can you speak to how that works a little bit? What you recommend within this the reporting, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think that for marketers, you have to understand what's important, and open rates and click-through rates and all of those things are important because they help us do our job better and perfect what we're doing. But what sales and executives want to know is how much pipeline was generated, and how much revenue was generated, and where was it sourced? Where did it come from? And whatever's working, let's do more of that. So again, you have to make sure that you understand what you're going to report on, and then set all of your process and your technology to be able to support that and track that and report on it.
So tracking back to the marketing source, kind of, or sales source, or whatever it came from, is really critical in that integration, I guess, between the two departments.
Completely. And I feel that I try to educate as much as I can on what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, and then they get used to it. And I don't know if any salesperson or sales team or sales executive has ever said, "Hey, can you give me a weekly report, or can you give me a quarterly report?" I just do it. I put it together.
They want the leads. They want the leads to show up on the report.
They certainly want the leads, but okay, so here are the leads and here's the reporting that goes along with it. And I walk them through what I'm tracking. And that's where that trust starts to get developed. I think that more than anything, out of all of this, the overarching theme is the trust in the relationship. It is fragile, and that is something that can be broken. It can be fixed, but once you get that trust and they understand where you're coming from and you understand where they're coming from, then I think that that's where really the magic starts to happen.
Yeah, and it seems like even if you have a salesperson that's, let's say, adversarial with the marketing, when you have those numbers in a report, when you're tracking things back and you can see, hey, here's the sales that came from the salesperson, they went out and got them, whatever it is, but here's the sales they closed that originated in marketing. When you can actually show them the numbers, most people can be influenced by the numbers. They can look at it and say, oh, wow,
exactly,
that's where those deals came from. And they'll start to get a little more appreciation for the marketing side, maybe not fight with marketing as much and work together when they realize, oh, marketing is here to feed me. And, it's a good thing and it's not a competition kind of.
Exactly. And it just takes a couple of really good deals for most individual sales guys to start coming, closer. If they are a little bit distant, they see the value and they see what you can provide. That's where it's really great. And then I don't think they should be dependent completely, but I definitely think that there needs to be a really good cohesiveness.
Yeah, maybe a healthy appreciation. I've noticed the first time you get a sales guy to come over to the marketing department and say, "Hey, can I have more of this?"
Right.
This thing you gave me right here, I want more of this. You say, okay, not only is that great feedback, but now that guy is bought into the marketing. He's an ally to the marketing department, and you know it at that point.
Completely.
So I want to get into a couple more things before we finish here. The tech stack for the sales and marketing integration specifically. There's a ton of MarTech out there for sales, a ton for marketing. But what about this gap between sales and marketing? Or sometimes it's just a CRM. I understand that, and that bridges the gap. But anything from CRM to very specific stuff that you recommend, have seen out there?
Well, I'm a huge advocate of the crawl, walk, run when it comes to organizations. And this is definitely to be said on the technology side, because there are just so much that you can implement.
Right. I think what you're saying out there for everybody is don't go out and get like 20 MarTech solutions and say, here's my tech stack. Now I need to learn them and use them.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that that's one of the first things that happens when you enter a marketing group is you just start getting called by sales guys to buy whatever marketing or sales technology they're selling. So I always just start with, there really needs to be a marketing automation and there needs to be a good CRM. Those need to be adopted. Now, I do see a lot of marketing automation functionality that is sold to either the market development reps, the business development reps to use, or the sales team, so they can have a little bit of visibility within what's going on with marketing. In my experience, I don't see a lot of adoption on that. If it's not really in the CRM, it's hard for them to utilize.
Any specific solutions in there that you've seen? Not to say you like one better than the other, unless you do, but just to throw out a couple names so people know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so I know that Marketo, I believe Eloqua, and Pardot all have these kind of Salesforce add-ons where the sales team can send out templates and see if or send out mass emails. See if they're open, what the open rates are, all of those type of things. And then also see, the lead scoring and whether something is hot, whether, someone has engaged. And it just has a lot more visibility. And in my experience, we've implemented them and it just wasn't, widely used. And again, I think it was just a little, in those situations, a little much for the sales team. They're like, we're just getting, all of the things that we need to do within the CRM. And then you're asking us to kind of do this other thing.